Welcome back, guys. In last week's episode, I took the motor out of my wife's fully street legal 2002 XR100R. I had the intentions of freshening up the top end with a new piston and piston rings and gaskets, but we discovered that the cylinder had a ridge all the way around it, which looked to be from a stuck ring. So rather than cut corners, I decided to order a brand new cylinder from Honda, all OEM. So we're going to replace the cylinder, put this all back together with Honda all OEM parts. In that last episode, I also pulled out the valves, cleaned up the chamber with a brass bristle brush, and I put new valve seals in it and reassembled it. So I reused the valves, the valve springs, all the valve components. The only thing I replaced was the OEM valve seals. So this head is complete. We can set it aside until it's ready for the install. We're going to get the rest of the motor back together and we're going to get it running today. Start off by opening up our OEM Honda piston. I also have the OEM wrist pin retainers or clips. Get those in as well. I'll put one on one side and then we'll put the other one in after. So I've got one side on over here. The other side is not. We're going to snap that in after we get it through the connecting rod. And I also have a new wrist pin for it. And we're just going to lubricate up everything with a little bit of motor oil. I generally run Honda oil in this. This is just some oil I had kicking around from my KTM. Just little dabs of this aren't going to hurt anything. That, you know, you mix in two oils, it's not going to really matter. Just put a light coat on it. Alright, now we'll slide the piston onto the connecting rod. You can see on the piston it says intake. So the intake is going to face back that way, to the back of the motor. This is the exhaust side over here. There we go. Now we'll snap in our other retainer. That's why it's important that you have this rag like down inside the engine so you don't lose stuff down in it. And I recently just made this little wooden box so I could like manipulate this motor around and do what I need to with it to make it easier to work on. And tell you what a huge time saver this thing is. These things can be tricky, especially if you have fat fingers. There. See that snap in there all the way? Now before we put our piston rings on the new piston, let's take our new piston rings and slide them into this new bore. And we already know what they were on this because I slid these new rings into this bore. And we had 16 thousandths. And at the ridge that I pointed out inside of here, we had, I think 20 or maybe even 24. Too much either way. This cylinder looks beautiful. Can you see the cross hatch marks? I ordered all this stuff from Motorsport. They don't sponsor me. I wish they would. I get all my stuff from them. I think they have the best prices, honestly. So let's put this down inside the bore and see what we end up with. Oh yeah, this is tight. Now if I remember correctly, I think the manual said we want 2/1000 of an inch. And we had 16 on the old bore. That gap right there is 7/1000 of an inch. Then we'll oil up our scraper ring. And we'll do the same thing that we did to the bottom ring. We're just gonna walk it on. There's no marks on these rings, on the oil rings, so it doesn't really matter which way they go on as far as I can tell. Now we'll lube up the second ring, which is going to be the black one, and that's the thicker of the two rings that you have left over. And on this, I don't know if you can see it, there's a little T right there. That means top. That mark is going to face up. And again, putting the rings on and just walk them around. You don't want to like pry them open like this to put the rings on. That'll bend them, and that wouldn't be good. I think it's time for me to get a new camera, guys. I don't know why the camera looks blue right now, but oh, there, straightened out now, I guess. Now we'll take out the cam chain mechanism. So we got to transfer all this stuff over to this new cylinder. So there's the adjuster spring right down in here. Put a little bit of oil on this shaft here. Slide it up through. Now hopefully the dowel pins all come out of the head. Now it's in time to install the cylinder. So you take some fresh oil, coating the inside of the cylinder. I'm not making this up. It's right in the Honda service manual. And again, we don't want to let the cam chain fall down inside the engine. Alright, this is where we got to just carefully work our rings on and make sure that our rings are all 120 degrees apart, offset from one another. Now we just got to slowly work this thing onto the cylinder. We'll put this other guide back in. There. Okay, and the gasket in the head. Now to center up this gasket so I don't pinch it, I'm going to pull the dowel pins out of the head and put them into this. Now we'll oil up the journal where the cam rides. Now we're going to install the cam chain adjuster, and we're going to lubricate the O-ring with some engine oil, and there's a little punch mark. We're going to install that facing up. So it says to install the cam with the lobes facing down. So they're both down. You can see that one's down, that one's down. So they're both down evenly right there. Then we can install our cam bridge right over that. Now I'm going to show you how to time this thing, and I've got the left side cover off. Now remember, we got our cams facing down, our lobes, which that's going to put these bolt holes in like a horizontal plane. And then we got to find the T mark on this balancer. Something's blown up in this motor at one time. You can see it's all scratched up. But there's a line here, 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 and here. I've determined that this is the T line right here, and I put a big T on it so I can see it in the future. So that is top dead center. And this little scratch line right there is lined up with this point right here. And with the piston at top dead center, we take our sprocket, and see how there's an O right there? That O is going to go straight up and down, just like that. And those bolt holes are going to be parallel with the head going that way. That's how you time this motor. So that I could get this in and get it adjusted easier, I pulled out this adjuster right here. And now I'm just going to take this little pick tool and rotate the crankshaft clockwise so it brings the cam with it, and I can start putting some of these bolts together. And then once I get these in, what we'll do is double check it and make sure that it's still in time. I'll show you how we'll do that. Now I can rotate it back around. Put this one in. And once we know everything's right, then we'll torque everything to spec. All right, so now we'll verify everything. So we're going to bring it back to top dead center. We're going to line up that mark right there to that point right there. You can see when that is like that, those bolt holes are parallel with the head surface. See that? And then that dot right there is straight up and down. So we know that this motor is perfectly in time right now. The timing's on. We'll still have to set the valves, but the timing is spot on. Now we'll start torquing everything. We're going to torque the cam bridge, and those go to 20 Newton meters. Just going to kind of go around them a little bit, bring them up slowly. So it starts signaling when you start getting close, just so you know to stop. So when you hear it, that was about 19. We got to bring them up to 20. Before I torque the cam gear bolts, I'm going to put just a little drop of blue Loctite. Do the same thing for this, just a little drop on it. And again, 12 Newton meters. So for the life of me, guys, I cannot find in my service manual the torque for this bolt right here, so I guess torque it at your own discretion. I don't know. The service manual last leads off and says to put this bolt in, but don't tighten it. If anyone knows what that torque is on that bolt for a 2002 XR100, please let me know. I would be very curious because I would love to go back and torque it to the right tension. I won't bore you with adjusting the valves, but the manual calls for 0.02 of an inch on the intake and the exhaust. And you can see slides through nice. And I can't get a 0.003 feeler gauge through that. And here's the exhaust. And if you've got to be one way or the other, guys, definitely air to the loose side on a valve versus the tight side, because tight will burn valves. Loose will just be noisy, and if they're too loose, they can mushroom them out. But that's good there. You hear just a little bit of sound. I think this shift shaft is leaking this seal right here, so I'm going to pull it out and replace it with a new one while we get this all apart. It's going to drive a screw in it with a drill to pull it out. Put a little grease on it to help the seal go in. And I also rubbed this shaft down with some sandpaper lightly all the way around it before I put this seal on, just to make sure there were no burrs, because I didn't want to cut this seal by accident. Alright, time to get this engine back in here. And I'm putting grease on the shank of the bolt. That way it doesn't rust inside the frame and whatever. This thing I can't crank over by hand really anymore. I can, but she's got compression now. You know, just got to put the carburetor boot back on. This thing's coming together pretty good. Then, oddly enough, there's an O-ring on this flange, but it also gets a gasket according to the parts diagram, which is a little weird, but that's what it is. So I picked up a new gasket for it. Now we'll put the exhaust back on, and I got a brand new Honda O-ring for the exhaust. And as I said in the last episode, I've replaced a lot of these bolts on this bike with these stainless steel button head cap screws, and it just keeps things from rusting, and it makes it look a little bit better. Alright guys, moment of truth. Let's see what happens here. Fuel on, choke on. She's probably a little cold-blooded right now. Hasn't been running all year. Wow, even the cam chain's pretty quiet, guys. No smoking. Did at first a little bit, obviously, just because it was burning off all the oil and the cylinder that we had oiled down and everything, but yeah, she's running great. Still not warmed up yet. This thing's running like a top, guys. I couldn't be happier. Let it warm up real good. Get good and warm. Do a couple heat cycles on it. Yeah, that did the trick, guys. New rings, new valve seals. I got it dialed right in. Valves are all lapped. Valves are all adjusted 2000s. Timing chain doesn't even sound like we have to adjust it. It's not noisy at all. After we do a couple heat cycles, we'll test the compression on it. Alright, we'll do another heat cycle with it. Man, I love this bike. This runs so nice. Just, I don't know, I think in general Hondas just generally run really well. Alright, let's see what it's got for compression. $70 again. So, weird. Huh, I don't know. I don't know what's up with that, why it's reading 70. Maybe the gauge is just bad, I don't know.
So I've since ordered a new gauge. I've actually got a liquid filled gauge, so we'll have to come back and readdress this down the road to see if that was actually the issue, because I gotta believe that the way this is running, it has way more than 70 psi of compression. And in an upcoming episode, we'll be taking this out, taking it on the street, trying it out, and see how we did in breaking in this new top end. As always, guys, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate your support on this channel, so please consider subscribing and tune in for more. Thanks, guys. I'll see you soon.